Good morning, everyone. Let's start our session today. Let me share my screen. Can someone confirm if they are able to see my screen and hear me? Can someone please confirm? Rani, Rakesh, Soumya, Ayapparadi. Can at least are you able to see my screen and able to hear me properly?
Yeah, visible.
Clear.
Yeah. Thank you for confirming. So yesterday we have seen about the test ng, right? So about all the annotations and at the rate test and then some properties of those. And yeah, so today I'll show you some of its usage. So how do we generally implement this in our Selenium part? So, but before that, again, let me see if there's one test. So here we have one test class, right? One class over here, and we have second test ng class here. And let's say if you want to execute this test cases. So here invocation count earlier I gave in 10, but I just want to execute it once, let's say. And then what I'll do. So to execute a different test ng class, what we are doing, we are just clicking on this run option, right? In this, if this class, we want to come here, right click, run as test ng thing. Else, if it's a different class, again, we had to run a different one, right? So what if, let's say we want to run all the test ng classes at just in a single go. So we cannot, like, if you have hundreds of classes, one by one opening that class and executing is not a real-time scenario, right? So to avoid that, so what testng has given is we can execute this particular classes from an XML file. So how to get that XML file? So here in your project itself, so somewhere even either in resources or in your project root folder itself, so you can create a file, go and just say select other, and then here from this file you can just create a file, or say XML file you can search for, and then you can create any XML file. Generally we name it as testng, but it's not compulsory. So testng.xml file is what we are looking for. That file we can create and we get that file, and there we need to write an XML code so to execute these things. So I would not show manually how to do all those stuff. So let's just I would show how we can generate it directly from our test engine. So here we have a class, right? So what you can do is just right click here, and then you get test ng option. So go to this test ng, convert to test ng is what we get an option. So once we get that, so here we'll get, okay, what suit name do you want to define for your test case? So suit name, I would say this is test suit, or suit itself you can say. So anything you want, but I would say test suit, or since we are doing orange HRM, so orange HRM suit, something like that. A proper relevant name is what you can give it. And then test name as well, test orange HRM, like this, something like that. And then here you have some code wherein this is nothing but an XML code again. And then what you do is, so the location, where do you want to store this? So under my project, I just want this name. So if you want a different name as well, you can give it. It's not compulsory you need to have only this name. So you can give a different name. So for I'm okay with this default location. So I'll just say finish. As soon as I click on finish, so we get this testng.xml. Similar like form.xml, we also get testng.xml. So testng.xml would have this code. So here it is test. I'll just remove these comments. It is not required. So this is how testng.xml would be there. So what all things it is written. So some syntaxes, basic ones which we need for our XML, and this DTD is what we get from this testng thing. So the syntaxes, when we try to write something, some code uh, regarding this, so kind of, let's say, so it generally starts with what tag, if you see, and then you would get some suggestions, and here the suggestions you are getting only because of this. So generally, as I said, suit would be a bigger one, right? So whatever test case you write, you it would be under suit, and then here suit name we can give. Test suit is what uh, we can say, and inside this suit is what we write our code, and inside this suit what else we would have. So we have groups, we have listeners, packages, parameters, test suits, test cases. So we have all these things. So basic thing which we want. So we can say our uh, test uh, test ng, something like this. I'll just give some test name, and inside this test again we can write what. So if you see, we can write classes, groups, packages if you want. So if I say classes, okay, inside test I would have classes, and inside classes I would have class, right? And parameters also there, and then class name. So here class name we generally have to give it. So this is how we generally write. So suit, under inside this suit we would have test, inside this test we would have classes, inside classes we would have class. So multiple classes we can have the same way. So instead of writing this manually, what I just prefer is we just converted it, right? So we have this, yeah. So here same thing, suit, test, classes, and class, and then that's it. So here thread count and this thing name, you just ignore it, not required for you. So initially to start with, so these are these things, right? So here class is what, which class are we executing. So from package reference we need to give the class name directly, just class name. If you say second test ng dot class, that class, so it won't execute that. It needs it under which particular package it is what. So complete package reference is what we have to do. So if you see here, it is test ng pack, and then dot inside this package, which class it is this. So we have taken this way. So same way, if we want different class, again add this thing, and then our next class name is not this one, it is second test ng dot this thing. So this class name, right? So this class name is what we want to write it here. So here, so we can list with what all classes you want to execute. So likewise we can give it here, and then how to just execute, same way, right click on this, run as testng. So testng suit is what you get, or else on your like testng.xml, right click and then run as testng suit. Here as well you get it. So anyhow you can just execute. So right click on this, and then it would execute this classes, and then whatever test you have written, test cases, it would execute all those things. So if you see, before class it has executed test, after class, and then log out, login, test is what you might have given it here. So here if you see, so first this class was executed. In this class, what was your first thing? Before class. So that's why before class was executed, even before executing this at the red test. So then actual test case has been executed, and then after class. So other annotations, like if you have, so you can even write that. And then next was your next class. In this class, what all things you have? You have different three test cases, and this three test cases priority you have given. This is 0, so logout would be executed. This is by default, if there is nothing, priority would be 0, as I said. And then priority 1. So next priority which I want to run is this, I said, and then this. So priority 2. That's why it executed in that way, right? So I hope this is clear. Only thing is, we can execute if we have multiple classes and all, we can execute from testng.xml file. So here, and there are again multiple things which we uh, generally perform. Again, few things. So let's directly just jump on to our test case. I would show you. So our previous test case, wherein if you have seen, was what? So there is one test case wherein we were logging in with invalid credentials, right? So this thing here, so this whole code, let's say we would write it. So here test case 1, test case 2, test case 3. So different classes we can create, and at the rate test we can annotate and say, okay, login with invalid, login with that, or login with this. So likewise we can give, or else what I will do is I'll try to create another package, crm.testng, testng package is what I'm just creating another package. And inside this package, I'll create one class called orange HRM. That's it, like this. And I'm not taking main method because we are not executing it from Java. So here we have a normal class, right? Again, at the rate test and method, if you write, it becomes testng class if you import testng packages. So what I'll do is, so here, if you have seen, we have some code to open the browser. Is this open browser? This open browser thing, and we already called it here somewhere, right? Yeah, here. And Chrome. So first step was to open the browser and this thing, right? So how about initializing it? So initially we gave the value as WebDriver this thing as null. So first step, let's copy this. So we define our this thing here. Let's say I want login method to be created. So public void and login to HRM. Just login method, let's say, instead of that. And then how we generally log in. So we have WebDriver equals to WebDriver equals to new Chrome driver. And then we set the property. So instead of this, we had also written what we had also written our where is that if I have to show you? Yeah. WebDriver, this two lines, right? So we'll use that way instead of again setting this thing. So here, so we have used this thing, and this line, what it does is it opens Chrome browser, right? And then so after this, login steps, how to perform. So we have driver.get, and so we maximize window, we do this stuff, open URL and enter password. We also have screenshot and then enter password, these things, right? So few steps, I'll just, to save the time, I'll just copy paste it. So till username is what I have copied. So and then username. So I won't take it from Excel for now. We'll just give it here. So Excel code also you can just add it. It's nothing like that. So you just guys practice on, and then I guess you would be able to do it. So if you follow these things properly. And next, enter password. So enter username is what we already done. Next thing is to enter password. So some password I have entered, and then click login button, right? login button, and then we get error message, and then we are printing out that error message. So after clicking on login button, then we are verifying. So for verifying, we had written what if else this statement, and then we done all that, right? And then we also close the browser. Let's say we have all these steps for now. Control A, Control I for proper indentation, and then so here so to say test, so at the rate test is what we just say it, and then import it from testng library. So here import org.testng.annotations. So from there I want, so this is now your test class, and to execute just right click and run as testng test is what we get it here. So this is what you have your code complete code in one test case. So similar way you can create multiple test cases here. uh, so different test cases is what we can create in different classes also. If you just create it, and then you would get those things here. So you see executed and test case got passed. So one test case was there, it got passed, and here the results are there. So this thing, it has taken 16 seconds somewhere, and then green color, which means it is passed, right? So this is your one test case. Again, if you see there are some lines of code which now another test case also, if we just write it. So next test case, if we say login logout test case. So one thing we have right, again in login logout, we again perform the same steps. Basically open browser, maximize this thing, open URL, entering this username password. So we give correct username password in that case, and then we just uh, kind of get a logged in page, and then after that logout would be visible, right? Logout page, this thing would be there, and then this this is how this can be another test case again inside this. So instead of this, you can create login logout test, again a different test case here, and then same steps you can just repeat on. But again, since we are repeating same lines of code, so what we can do is we can kind of differentiate this uh, test cases, test steps again, like this step is to open browser, so open Chrome browser and launch application. So launch application is what you have common. So if you have this thing, so this, instead of keeping this in at the rate test method, you can keep this in at the rate before kind of method or test or suit, whichever is your requirement. So when you write another test case, so even another test case needs this same code. So if it needs that, then what you can do is so let me show you then in that case. Or this is your one test case, so same test case, I'll just copy paste again. I'll again try to refactor it, or next another class itself I'll just create. Okay, let's say 2. This in this thing, what I'll do is, so instead of keeping everything in here, what I'll do is I'll create another test cases also, like at the before. If you don't want to use, we can even create test cases. Say public void open application is what we can say. So open application. So how to open application? We need WebDriver this thing, and maximize, manage this thing, and then till these steps, right? So this I'll just cut and then paste it here. So this is fine, right? Next thing, if you see, we are getting error in the driver. Reason, because this driver is not defined in this browser, in this method. That browser is defined here, right? WebDriver. So what driver is? Chrome. So here you're saying driver, but which browser? This method doesn't understand which browser it is. and then on empty thing you're trying to do something, right? So that's why this lines of code is not valid. So how to make it valid? So instead of declaring this thing inside any of that method, so here again this is nothing but again a test class, a different test class. So this is your first one test case, this is your second test case. So likewise we are just differentiating the these steps. So what we'll do here, uh, so instead of giving all these things in this place, what we will do is, so driver, I'll just remove it from here. In the class level I will declare it. Okay, so initially this value we would have, and then here I would say driver. So whatever this thing I have defined, same variable I'm using it here. Now first thing, this driver would, this is empty here, basically it would be null, right? So this is null, empty value. But when this method is executed, driver from null it changes to Chrome, and then on Chrome it maximizes, it loads the URL. Same way, after that step what we want is, we want to perform this thing. So browser, you just enter this admin credit, like enter username, enter password, and all these steps you perform. And next step you say driver.close. So for closing of browser as well, you don't want to add this in this particular thing. Again, you can create a different method. So which is at the test, and then add public void close browser or close application, anything you can. So close browser I would say, and then line to close is just this line. So this is your another test case, even if you want, so you can create it this way. uh, Now you have three test cases here. It should run this, then this. But we know from that method, right? So sometimes in what order if it executes, so based on alphabetical order, and alphabetical order, if it follows this one then that's fine, if it doesn't follow then yeah, everything would be messed, right? So if I just say run test engines test, so it should actually execute it in this way, and let's see what it does. So it's opening, launching this. Launching this thing, and then if you see test run, one pass. Okay, sir. So which, yeah, it has at the rate test. This should be executed. No. Okay, I might have executed. So I'll say run all. I have just executed one, I think. So I'll run all the test cases. It's opening browser, logging in, and then test run 3. Passed one, 2 are failed. Why 2 are failed? If you see what happened, so cannot invoke this because null. So it means this value is null. So let me keep this as static so that driver would be assigned with some value. So this is how you just have to implement it. So whichever you think, okay, you need, what all steps you need, if you have those things, you just arrange things in that way. Again we get this error, and you see cannot invoke close browser. uh, Driver dot close. So this driver is not been using this same value. So basically this open thing is what we want to do. So I guess some order would be shuffling. So as I said, so just to make sure if things are working fine, what we can do is this, we can set priorities, as I said, right? So priority equals to 1. So I want this to be executed first, and then priority is 2. So I want this to be executed because to close browser, before close browser itself, it would before login itself, it would execute close browser, because C comes first before L. So because priority is not been set, then it would try to do those particular things. That's why. So set the priority here. And then run. But I just don't recommend using like creating test cases at the rate test cases for all that three things here for this thing. So you see admin it has entered and then logged out. So now total test cases run was 3, passed is also 3, because so in whichever order we have said, it had executed that, and now it is working fine. So because earlier we didn't give this priority thing, and then it was executing. So before open application O, it was executing what? C. And then without even giving driver value, what were we doing? We were closing it. So that's why first thing is what? It shouldn't execute first. It should be executed last, right? So instead of, so this is how we can create at the rate test. So instead of this, what other things which we have seen was, so if you see, if we don't give priority, and we know, so this is your some prerequisite, right? Something which you want to do before your actual test case, right? And then this step should be done after your test case is performed. So we have seen other annotations, right? At the rate, before, after. So those things we can apply it here. Now what is that we'll apply here? So this thing before test case, so only one test case is there which we can assume for now, our login test. And then this login test, this is not our test case. We don't want it to be treated as test case. This is just basic prerequisite, right? So instead of at the rate test, I would say this is before. So you can see either class or suit or test or methods. So before methods as well, you can say it. So I would say before suit for now, and then the this thing I would say after suit. After suit. So executing, I don't want. So now if you see, now if I run this test class, what happens? So this complete uh, all the annotations, whatever we have written, would be executed based on what order, what thing we have written. So what have written? So total test cases. How many test cases are there? There was just one test case, and that one test case got passed, right? And here also you can see. So it has taken this much of time. It is passed. And what about the other annotations? So these are just prerequisites. It's not actually the test cases, right? So for this login is our actual at the rate test case, and then open application and close browser is what, that is common thing. So one test case is this, right? Now after login, let's say we have another test case. So this, and verification that I wanted to tell here. So one thing was verification. So how to use verification? So here we get this text, right? And it is printing. So in the console, if you see, invalid credentials, yeah, this is what it has printed, right? So we'll just verify our actual with. So here instead of login, you can say invalid login, verify invalid login. So we can say that way, verify invalid login credentials. So this thing. So how to verify? So I said we shouldn't be using if else there, right? So we were just printing it on the console, but we don't want to do that. So through assertions we can do it. Now what assertions is? Basically we would be verifying something with expected with actual. So how to use assertions? So you just say assert, you would get some packages classes here. So by default, which is used to verify something with your expected and actual. So then it should be coming from org.testng. So there are different things as well, JUnit and all, but since we are doing testng, we'll just prefer testng. So assert dot, and now if you see assert dot, what you would get, assert equals, assert now boolean values, something actual and expected you can compare, and so string with the string, so float with float, all this integer with integer value. So all these different comparisons is what we would get it. And so in this, what we want, we also have assert not null, assert a null, assert true, assert false, assert equals true, assert true, assert false, boolean condition. So we have all these methods available. So you just try to use this thing, execute, practice, and see how the behavior is. So, and if you have something, get doubt, you can reach out to me, so I can clarify further. So here, what I will do is assert dot. I want to compare some two strings, right? Basically, this value we are getting actual value in a string, and then our expected is what here before the test case gets start only, we would be defining my expected message. So when I run this invalid login credentials, my expected message should be, so this we get from the requirement. So invalid credentials, when a user is entered in the application, I need to see some error message, something. So here I can say something called error message is what I'm expecting. So a message called error message on the page is what I'm expecting here. So I would come here and say assert dot assert equals, and then in this, so I don't want to compare boolean, I want to compare my actual string messages. So here just give those things. So here assert dot assert equals, here you can say, okay, this is my this is actual, and here we need to give this is expected, right? So this thing here, wait, I'll just execute this thing in some other class. Yeah, so instead of this, so after execution here, I just want to compare it here. So I just want to run this test case, and then it should give me this particular. So assert dot assert equals, I'm just comparing two values, two strings is what I'm saying. So if you see here, we get some error. So expected is this, but found this, which means we got some failure, and the failure was you are expecting something, but you have got something else. So just to make this thing correct, so I can say like just verify name, name is Pradeep, right? So so here if I give Pradeep, and same thing I'm also expecting, so two strings. So I'm just checking Pradeep is equals to Pradeep or not, right? So same thing here in our Java code as well. If some string is dot equals some other string, so same way, instead of using that if and else thing, we can use assert dot assert equals, and two strings we can say. And now when you execute it here, it should give us pass statement. So you see, one test case run, pass, and here, so after pass you will just see a green statement, nothing else. But if something is failing now, Pradeep is what the actual thing is, but I'm expecting it should be Dawalji, my full name. So these two are different strings, right? So basically this would get failed. Now as we have seen, if I run this, you see there would be a failure, one failure. And then here if you see expected, I was expecting actually this name, but found this name. And here is what we have it. So, and also, but again, if you see there is something like not a proper message. So what is this? Dawalji and Pradeep, these are name, right? So for proper user understanding, we can give another a message saying this is name comparison. A message is what we can give this. And now if you execute, you see when something assertion is failed, you would get some messages here, like saying, okay, whatever, if it is failed, if you see something is failed, so this is name comparison. So whatever you are expecting and found, so expected and actual is what, this is name comparison. So we are comparing names. So user friendly message is what we can give to this assert dot assert equals as well. That is optional, but yeah, it's better to give if something fails, and then if we are trying to debug, understand, okay, what is this actually expected actual, oh, this is name, so these two names are different, so should it be different, should it be same, is what we have to just make sure. So if we give just same name, and then this would be passing, right? So test case got passed because expected and actual were same. So same thing in our test case as well, we need to do it. So whatever we are uh, expecting, so we have expected, so expected, and then in actual, how are we getting from this particular application, from this XPath, we are getting that actual message, right? So that thing we are doing it. So how to check that, verify? So assert dot assert equals we use, and then actual error message is what, it would be stored, this one actual error message is what, invalid something, and then expected is what we have to give it here. Expected, we know we have stored that in a variable, so this variable is what we can give over here, and then that's it. So then after this, next line, code completed, code executed, something like, just a user message if you want to give. So this is done. Now if you just execute this test case, so you would see, you see, one test case was there, it got failed. Why it got failed? Now if you scroll up, you would see error, expected, what it was expecting, it was expecting error message, text called error message, but found invalid credential. So which means, oh, you were expecting this message in the application, but you have got something else. And now in this case, you need to see whatever you are expecting, is it correct? If it is correct, then whatever you are getting in the application, if it is not as per the same, then your test case should get failed. So here the message, if you see, it is invalid credentials. So are you expecting invalid credentials or some error message? So here we can clearly see, okay, we are like in the requirement, they would say upon giving this username password, in clicking on this, a message should be displayed saying invalid credentials on the web page. So this thing, if they show, if they say in the requirement, same thing, requirement thing, here we need to give in our expected as well, right? And then that's it. So here we would get this. So now if you run, so previously the test case got failed, and the failure reason was expected thing was failing, right? Now if I execute, they should get passed because expected and actual are same now, and everything, the code is working fine, so it should give us a test pass message. You see, so one test case was there, it got passed, nothing failed. And yeah, so our verification step is also what, successfully able to complete it. So this is how we can do this. And now next, other thing, other test case that I was saying is, so invalid login is what we have performed, and now you want to perform some login, valid login test case, let's say. So instead of verify invalid login, so my next test case is verify valid login. And then this error message thing I don't want. I just want to enter username and enter password as correct password. What is the correct password here? It's admin123. I will enter this admin123 and then click on login button, and I don't get these things. So uh, how to check the valid credentials? So here we have this, right? And open browser, send keys, XPath, and then title of the drop down page thing we had done. So wait for element. So after login button, what are we doing? We are trying to find an element on the logged in page. After login, we get an element. So that element reference, we are checking it and then waiting for this particular amount of time and checking if that element contains this particular text. If it contains, then yeah, that's it. We are fine with what we are getting, and then that's it. So my test case is this much only, I would say. So here at the end also you can say if all these lines are executed, I would say assert dot assert true, and here I would pass the value as true, which means till this line if it comes, and then if this line is executing, I would say the test case should be passing. So that's why I'm giving true. So assert dot assert true of false if I give, and this test case is what executed, then it would throw an error. So here in this test case itself, so if you see, where is annotation? Yeah. So here instead of this, now after verifying that, you say assert dot assert true. Here, if I pass false, and if I'm executing this one, so this line, when 30th line is executed, it would throw an error. Deliberately, we are trying to fail. It should accept if we send a true statement, then or else instead of this 2 greater than 4. So is 2 greater than 4? No, right? So it would fail here. So if you see 2 is greater than 4, no, right? And when you run this, so a boolean value is what we are trying to evaluate here, and when 2 is greater than 4, so expected true but found false. So we were expecting assert dot assert true is expecting true value, but you have given something called false. That's why failure message. So a session is failed. So just to make that uh, true, you can say 2 is less than 4 and not greater than 4. And now if you run, this should get passed. You see, one test case executed, one passed, and our session also got passed. So same way here, what we are saying is till this line, if everything goes fine, and then assert dot assert true is what we are saying true. So we are just also verifying that that is not required, but I just wanted to show you. Now this test case is what we have given, right? Now if you see, can we just directly run this test case? There are two test cases, right? One is verify invalid and one is verify valid. Now if you run all the test cases, you see what happens. It's logging, giving credentials, invalid thing is done, and other test case also got executed, and two test cases got passed. But our requirement was one time one test case executes, it should close the browser, and the next time next test case should log in freshly with the what I would say, here I would else I'll say priority equals to 1, which means first this test case should get executed, and then so first I want valid credentials to be executed. After that, I want this invalid thing. And here instead of this 30 seconds, I'll just set one time. So now run all the test cases. So now if I execute, there are two test cases in my thing. class. One is with valid, first one valid credentials, so it should enter valid thing, and then it got passed. So logged in is there, and verification, it should say okay, you application has logged in, so that test case should get passed. Then second test case, so if you see two test cases were run, one was passed, one is failed. Why one was failed? So if you see, no such element, unable to locate element with username, because when you executed first test case, it was on the logged in screen, and next test case, what are you doing? You are directly executing from this line, and it is trying to find username, but on the screen it was logged in screen. So which means for this test case, what you wanted is, you wanted again the browser should have been opened, right? Again a new browser, new URL should have been launched, and then this test case would have got passed. But here, since you have given before suit, so which means it would just execute once and all the test cases would be executing. So we don't want it that way. That's why for every test case we want this to be executed. So instead of giving it suit, we give before method. So before method we have seen, so it would be executed every time when a test case is executing. So before that, and then close browser as well. So after method is what we want to done. So with this line of code, what it does is it opens the browser. Let it execute, and I'll explain meanwhile. Yep. Yeah. So what test case we have written is, there are two test cases, and at the rate before after method we have written. So one test case, when it is executing, it executes before method, which is open browser, does the process, close the browser, and next second test case when it is executing, again it opens the browser, login in and verify invalid thing, and close the browser. So this is how we actually have this flow. So this is how you just have to use annotations based on your requirement, basically what your requirement would be. So based on that thing, you need to closely have a look. Now next third test case, if you say login and logout, then what you have to do, same login step you would be performing, and then in that third test case, you also write a step to logout. So after this thing, you would write logout thing, and then yeah, you want browser to be opened every time, log in and then log out, do all the steps likewise. So this again same package you can run from your testng.xml, or what you can do. So I don't want to run all these things, I just want one class to be executing, which is from here. So how to run this orange hrm2 package? So the package for this is this package. Copy it into your testng.xml. So package name dot your class name, I want my class name as this one to be executed. Come here, paste it, and now run this testng.xml. Right click, run as testng. So this testng suite is what we would be executing. Same thing from XML file, testng.xml file is what we are running our test cases. So if there are n number of test cases, we can write that, execute, and some test cases, if we want, we enable it. So use those properties, enable, disable. So sometimes when you have all the test cases, I want only one test case to execute. I don't want this test cases to execute likewise. Or here again, and priority is there, right? So priority, if you remove, and now irrespective of, so this test case is not kind of dependent on these things, right? So these test cases are independent. So if it is dependent, we can write something called depends on methods again here. So we get this depends on method, and then this test case, if it is this test case gets executed successfully passed, then only this test case, if you want to execute, then we use this depends method here. And then in this, we need to give this test case name. So if invalid login credential is what this test case executes, then only valid login is what I want to execute. if you have that requirement, so you can use this kind of syntax. And then so whenever this test case gets executing, so it would check if dependent method is executed or not. If it is executed, then only it gets executed, else it won't execute. So it would skip it. So there are different properties and this thing. So I would just suggest you just keep on practicing these things, and then you would be getting used to all these terms, I would say. So this is how testng is. From XML you want, you can run, and then uh, class, yes, and it's with class. So we can include some methods. So yeah, I just don't want to confuse you with. So this is it, I would say. So about execution of classes from testng.xml file. So yeah, anyone have any doubts? Someone wants to ask? Rakesh, you have unmute yourself. Do you want to ask anything? So yeah, this is all about our training session, I would say. So we have gone through like Java, we have done Maven, and then we have done this Selenium, the SNG unit test framework as well. So with all these concepts is what you can now try to automate any of the other websites, other website like demo web shop, I would say. So you can automate some of the other websites. So pick some website, and then do some basic things like login or registration, and then select something. So different test cases you just create on your own for kind of practice, and then you should be able to log in any of the web-based applications using this concepts with whatever we have discussed. So I would end our training sessions with this particular thing. Anyone has any doubts, they are free to ask. And other thing is, tomorrow it's like I just want to take an optional session, like wherein whoever is interested in. So I would be giving a brief about in real time in companies how we generally what work we do. So we would have framework, right? So in framework, so this is kind of example framework that I'm saying on. So we would have framework, and then in framework how we actually write our test cases. So where the test cases would be there, and upon execution what all reports we get it. So whenever we execute, whenever we write our test case, so how we generally have to write our test cases. So framework for a fresher and all, they don't have to build it. Only thing is experienced person like around over 5 years plus or something, they might expect to design a framework. Also in companies when we work on, it's not like every company would again need uh, a framework to be developed by their employees. So one framework for like few frameworks would already be there with the companies which we are working on, and then they would follow their own frameworks. That framework would be designed, and then inside that framework itself we just have to automate, write the test cases. So I would for a sample one, I have my own framework which I have created, so I can tell how like how we generally automate the test case. So basic whatever we have done, this orange HRM thing, so login and log out, right? This thing, login thing, that test case, I would show how do we generally add that test cases here and execute it. Upon execution, so we also get reports. So if I have to show you the report, you see when a framework is developed, when framework is built, so upon execution of test cases, there's some report that is used. So here, if you see a test case name, a proper report would be generated, and what are the steps that we performed and the time and the status of that. So some kind of reports we get it. So this would already be built in the framework. So we don't get these things directly in Selenium or Java. We have to use other plugins, other projects over here, and then you see you get some nice UI wherein okay there were how many test cases and how many test cases were passed, failed, and on which environment we executed. So all this extra information and all would be there. So in this report, this is what extent reports. Similar thing, we would have this report. So this report, if we share with someone who with which your client we are working on, so they would be understanding, okay, this many test cases were there, this many test cases got passed, few test cases got failed, reason for failures, screenshots and all we can attach in that reports. So day to day you would just have to work on that. So tomorrow is, as I said, an optional session I would take for an hour or two, and then would tell how exactly I have worked on this part. So yeah, I'm open for questions if there are any, and if there's nothing, then I guess we are good to close with our this training sessions. Thank you, everyone. Well then, if there are any no further questions or anyone doesn't have any doubts, then we are good to close. So thank you guys.